Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, really glad you joined us. You picked a great episode to join us on. Our guest today is Dr. Jaime Raygoza. He's going to share his story about how he kind of accidentally went on and got a doctorate and started up the business that he runs now, which is a coaching and consulting business, which is friendly to the LGBTQ plus community, but not specific to it. His story is super interesting and a lot of twists and turns. And like all of our guests, he overcame a lot of challenges, and his message and his approach is very positive. He's very well educated in what he's talking about and provides great examples for all the things and suggestions that he has. So you're going to absolutely love our conversation with Dr. Regoza. So let's bring Jaime onto the podcast right now. Jaime, thank you so much for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk tonight.
Thank you for having me on. I'm really excited.
Yeah, for sure. We had a great conversation a little over a month ago now, and you got a lot of stuff going on, and you got an excellent story, and excellent thoughts and advice and tips for listeners. And I'm really excited to kind of get into that with you and have a great conversation around you and those topics. So, our podcast is really targeted at people who want to build and live a purposeful, meaningful life. So we don't get to tell, we don't try to tell people if you want to be a ballerina or a plumber or a lawyer or a teacher or a insert thing here, we don't care. Like, it's not that we don't care, we don't not care. But we're agnostic to it. We just want people to go after what's important to them in life. And we try to expose them to a wide variety of people, a wide variety of ideas, a wide variety of approaches, so that they have as much information available as possible to make good decisions and build that life that they want. And I think you're just a shining example of someone who is in the process of doing that. And, you've still got a lot of life ahead of you, but you've accomplished a lot already in life. And you're so willing to share and talk about those things and share your expertise. Really excited about it. So what we try to do at the start is, if you could just give us like a broad overview of your life, start kind of high school, and like if you want to talk about your childhood, that's fine too. Like, we're not telling you not to, but kind of where you started, and walk us through some in a general way where you're at now, and then we go back and do kind of a deep dive on the major things, the inflection points, things like that. So the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah. So I guess we could start in high school since that's when majority of my stuff happened. Um, and so I didn't learn English until I was like 13 years old. I was born and raised primarily speaking Spanish. Parents immigrated here from Mexico. So I was kind of that person that translated for my parents for a while. I was the one like that had to really learn English to help my parents survive. But because of English being my second language, I was put in special ed classes because they didn't really have ESL like, classes in my area where I grew up. So I was put in special ed, I was put in special English classes, and a lot of the individuals, like the teachers, just said, this kid is just not really going to achieve much because of the language barrier. Little did I know that one of the reasons I had such difficulties, along with not understanding the English, is that I had ADHD, and I didn't get diagnosed until as an adult. So my whole childhood, it was just kind of like, he's lazy, he's unmotivated, he just doesn't get it. And a lot of people just said, oh, it's because he doesn't know English. Oh, it's because English is a second language. So it was something that I had a very hardcore Mexican accent growing up. And because of the shame that happened, I really conditioned myself to try to Americanize my accent and try to get the Mexican accent as much as possible. So in being first generation, it was hard for me to set realistic expectations because my parents were, you're the future. Like we sacrificed everything so that you can have a better future and essentially bring uplift the whole family. So
No pressure, huh?
exactly. Failure was no option. So I had to do all the AP classes, I had to do all the honors classes, I had to apply to scholarships, figure out what this college thing was all about. And I just struggled a lot because, like I said, my brain didn't work the same way as everybody else. So my high school counselor sat me down my junior year and said, "Your grades are not the best." And, there's a point in life where one has to essentially realize that we're not meant for great things. And it's okay if you just, the highest you could ever make is being like a realtor worker or just working on McDonald's. She's like, and this is coming from like a person that's supposed to inspire me, right? And get me to go somewhere else. The ironic thing is that this individual, was also Hispanic and had a similar background as me. And instead of pushing me up and giving me like praise and saying you got this, it was just kind of like, it's okay, we're not all meant for great things. And it's all right. And I kept hearing that over and over again since I was a child. So I was like, no, I'm gonna try my best to get in there. And I was offered a full ride at UC Riverside, so I took it. And from there, I just kept going and going and going until finally I got diagnosed with ADHD, got proper medicated, and then after that, it was just like, whoa, this is what it is to be normal. This is what it is to function like everybody else. And I got my doctorate degree. Now I help people not go with the same obstacles that I went through.
Wow. That's that is wild. It's funny. I don't know if funny is the right word. That's probably the wrong word, but um we had a woman on, we haven't aired her episode yet, but she 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 came out as gay. I think she was in her late 20s, early 30s, and she had been in heterosexual relationships before then, but fell in love with a woman. And her family wanted her to seek counseling. So, like, she did it because that's just that was the choice she made, and that's fine. But she said the first words out of her therapist's mouth when she met with her therapist was, "You're much too attractive to be, you can't be gay. You're much too attractive to be gay." Like
Oh, wow.
the number of people that are in leadership positions or have training in dealing with these types of situations that just open mouth and insert foot deeply are shocking to me. Like, it's wild to me how many of those people are out there. And I just it's so strange to me. Um going back a little bit further, how did you learn English? Was it immersion? Did you study it? What, like, how did you approach it?
You're gonna judge me. I judge myself sometimes, but I always say watching Pokemon growing up on television was one of my
Uh-huh.
easiest ways for me to learn because I was like, I don't know what they're saying, but I want to know how they're catching these things in balls. So I was just like, I want to understand what all this is all about. So that was one of the big things. Watching a lot of television definitely helped. I did take a couple English classes. I did have a couple of teachers that would stay with me during lunch to teach me, different words and different things. So I had a lot of, as much as I had people pushing me down, I did have people that were also rooting for me. And because of those individuals that took time, it really did help. And my mom was one of those individuals that her English was very broken. She understood more than she could actually speak, but because she didn't want me to fail, like she forced me to only talk English at home. And she like even if she didn't know what I was saying, she was like trying her best. And together we both learned English a lot. And it was like watching the TV shows, reading books, and going to classes and just trying to immerse ourselves as much as possible. It really did help.
Got it. So first off, Salty Ginger Talks no judgment zone. So all we want people to do is be themselves, and we love authentic people. So no judgments. If you Pokemon helped you, awesome for Pokemon. At least something good came of it, because my kids watched Pokemon and I never got it. Was But like, I wasn't the target audience at that point at that point in my life either. Um, it's interesting because my youngest son just got engaged, and my future daughter-in-law is from Puerto Rico. And so she moved to the States when she was 6 or 7. She spoke no English also, but they kind of segregated her in her school. and kind of sent her like in a janitor's closet with a tutor. And that was the approach that they took. But she worked very hard and she's bilingual now as well. And it's funny because I have to learn Spanish because some people in her family are only Spanish speaking, and I'm certainly not going to let people talk about me without not knowing what they're saying. So I got to have family members that speak Spanish. I got to learn Spanish too. So I'm working on it right now, actually. Um, so when you were, did you notice, like, I know you didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until later, but did you notice, like, did you ever look around and go, hey, why is it so much easier for that person to do X, Y, or Z than me? Did you notice anything like that when you were young?
I did, but because there was multi layers of like disadvantage, it was hard for me to pinpoint what it was. And even as an adult, it took me a long time to really find out that it was that. And at first, a lot of my failures came from because because you learned English at a later time in life, or you just weren't immersed into the culture. Even though I was born here, just having parents that didn't know English was hard, you know. And with that, a little bit of like the stigma of like certain things that you would do or not do in the culture added to it. So, you know, being able to talk to other people or being able to hang out and do certain sports or you know, we weren't really ones that were reading Harry Potter or, you know, reading all the other ones like everybody else. So I was over here watching Mexican novellas, or I was like, you know, just watching Telemundo or you know, helping my parents. Like I had to work a lot. Like on my free time, my parents would take me to the family-owned business, which my dad was a carpenter, and I would help. So I didn't do what other like young kids did. So I felt like between having to work, having to take care of the family, having to learn English, I didn't know which one was affecting my development. Like I never felt like I fit in. When my friends were like, "What you do this summer?" I was like, "Oh, I helped my dad work the whole week, the whole summer. I was just, you know, helping him install cabinets, making doors, you know, sweeping, mopping, all of that stuff, making sure like sometimes I played receptionist and taking like helping with like phone calls and whatnot." And then they were like, "Oh, we went to Disneyland, we went to Disney World, we went, you know, on vacation here, vacation there." So there was always that disparity of like, they don't get me, you know? And it wasn't until one of my best friends, who's still my best friend till now, I met her in fourth grade. She came from Mexico, and the teacher was like, "Oh, Jaime speaks Spanish. Here, you're gonna be placed with him, and he's gonna be your new person teaching you English." And from there, we were paired, and pretty much all the way till high school, we became best friends, and we helped each other out. And she was the one person that understood exactly what I was going through because she started her journey as well as the same as me.
Got it. Well, it's good that you had someone though, like that, like at least it wasn't just you and your family against the world. That had to have been a little bit helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Having like people that understand you, that you don't have to explain things to, and just it really does help.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I know we'll talk a lot more about that when we get into your current business. But yeah, totally agree with that statement. Was did you have a strong desire to pursue your education, or like after someone who you is supposed to inspire you, look up to you, says, "Hey, maybe you're a Best Buy guy, or you know, maybe you should sell movie tickets for a living, or whatever." Um, did that light a fire under you, or did you always have a desire to pursue? Like, I mean, you got the highest level of education one can achieve. What drove you to that?
I do want to premise that I hate school. I hate education. I like learning. I just don't
Hmm.
like doing work that comes with it. So
Yeah,
there's a lot like I've always had curiosity to learn, and when there is a topic that just drove my interest, I would absorb it really quickly. But it was write a 5 paragraph essay on this one book that everybody wants to read that is like super boring. That was something that I could not do. You know, like to this day, I have yet to read the Grapes of Wrath, and
yeah.
I probably never read it. And it's something that like they forced me to read certain books. I just didn't. It's just difficult. I am a true believer that there's multiple ways of learning something, and there should be multiple ways of teaching something as well. So just wanted to premise that. But what ended up helping me was I had two choices. I had the choice of accepting the failure or telling myself, I'm going to use this as motivation to prove people wrong. And ironically, I actually just presented at my high school. I was asked to come and and speak about my journey, and the high school counselor was there. And
Oh,
they
you're
just
kidding me. The same one that told you to go sell movie tickets?
yeah, yeah. And I mentioned there was someone who was like influencing my decisions and told me that I wasn't going to amount to anything. And I'm glad to prove her wrong. And she was there, and I just saw her kind of like put her head down. And I was like, she remembered me. She remembered me. And we had a talk after, and she apologized. But it was one of those moments that it came full circle because you have to be able to you have to believe in yourself, and you can't let other people's decisions or insecurities about themselves or anything else really judge if whether you're successful or not.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. I think that's a great way to look at it. When you were going through at UC, so did you do everything at UC Riverside? Did you get your doctorate there as well?
No, so I got my bachelor's in sociology from UC Riverside. From there, I said I'm never going back to school again. This sucked, and I don't want to do it again. I loved the experience, but I was like, I hate studying. Um, I went into Parks and Rec because at that instance, it just fell in my lap, and I was like, okay, why not? My supervisor was saying, I want to promote you as a supervisor, but you can't do it unless you have a master's degree. So we're gonna sit down together and apply for your master's degree and see if you get in. And I said, fine, but I'm not gonna get in, and I got in. So I was like, fine. And then she was able to get me a scholarship, 50% off from Cal Baptist University. And I was like, you know what? Okay. So I did the schooling, graduated, and I said, I'm never going to go to school again. This is it. Like it was horrific. I learned a lot. I enjoyed it, but I'm never doing this again. And it was on 2020, right before the pandemic started. It was January of 2020. One of my staff was saying, it's so difficult to get into a master's program. Like, I wish I could be like you. And I was like, yes, you can. I was like, it's really easy to get into school. You just have to put yourself out there. She's like, no, it's not. And I was like, look, not that I want a doctorate degree, but I can show you that I'm probably like, it's really easy. Let me apply. Tell me what school do you want to go to? And they're like, Touro University. It's in Chicago and in New York. And I was like, sure. So I pulled it up and look, there's a doctorate degree. I'm not going to apply for a master's. I was like, I'll apply for a doctorate. I'm not going to do it. Um, but I just want to show you that it's possible. So we sat down, we apply. I showed her how to apply, and I submitted. No joke, within a week, they called and they're like, oh, we just had an opening. Would you be willing to start next quarter? And I was like, no, I just applied to prove a point. And she's like, well, we have a scholarship that we can offer you like 40% off to tuition. We like your profile. We like what you've accomplished and what you propose to research. We can give you the scholarship like every year. And I was like, sure. So then I went into my doctorate degree, and here I am, a doctor. And I've told myself I'm not going to go back to school, but ask me again in 5 years.
I was going to say I'm not going to be responsible for your next degree, so I'm not going to ask you that question. You can point to somebody else when you have your second and third doctorate. You can say, "Hey, it wasn't Joe. It was this person or that person." Fine with me. So yeah, boy, you must have been working for a really serious Parks and Rec program if they won't promote you without a master's. How did that work? That I've never heard of that.
Yeah, so I was working for the city of Riverside, and they just had a very stringent, like very strict requirement. So in order for you to become a program coordinator, you had to have a bachelor's degree. In order for you to have become a supervisor of Parks and Rec, you had to have a master's degree. And then from that point, it just went on experience. So it's a master plus 5 years, a master plus 10 years, a master. So it was always that. So my boss was like shaping me to become um the next her because she was in line to promotion to become a regional director. And I said, okay, let's do it. And she ended up getting promoted, and then I lost interest once I graduated, and I was just like, I'm just gonna go somewhere else, and I went into case management instead.
Mm. And when you were in case management, like, did you specialize in anything? I don't know how case management works. So I'm just curious what your experiences were when you took on that role.
Yeah, so I got promoted into, well, I got hired into a supervisor role to lead homeless, like a group of case managers that were in homeless services. Because of my sociology degree, that qualified me for that position. They wanted someone in a master's degree with a sociological like background. So
Mm.
that's what ended up qualifying me. From there, because homeless services is a catch-all, you work with individuals with domestic violence, substance abuse, mental health disorders, they're homeless, they're looking for jobs. It's pretty much trains you to focus on every single niche out there in human services. From that point on, I qualified to become a director of domestic violence. I ended up going into victim advocacy. I ended up going into um, home visiting, child development, pretty much anything in human services. And all because of that one job that I landed with homeless services. And it really just is, they ask you, do you have experience working with these individuals and helping them through their process? And if the answer is yes, and they see that you have the degrees to back it up, then you usually get it.
Wow. So I always find it so interesting that we have a wide variety of people from a wide variety of backgrounds on the podcast. That's absolutely intentional. We want to expose our listeners to as many different points of view, as many different thought processes, as many different approaches as possible, because my way works for me and my way resonates with a certain number of people, but it's not the only way. And I'm not even saying it's the right way. I just know it works for me. However, if we can expose our listeners to a wide variety of those things, it gives them a ton of information and a ton of knowledge. But we do see commonalities across our guests, and we really appreciate you coming on. We attract high caliber people like yourself on the podcast, and so it leads to very interesting conversations. One of the things we see is people that build lives that they love, that are successful, take action. And a lot of times they take action not knowing where it's going to lead, not necessarily saying, hey, this is exactly where I want to go and this is the next step, so I'm going to do it. They find an opportunity that looks like it's a good opportunity and they take it. And then that leads them down a path. And I think that's exactly where your story heads too. And I just find it so interesting that that single thing is something all of our guests have in common. And like you just talked about, getting that sent you on this track that you're on now. So you when did you pivot? So you think you said after your doctorate, is that when you opened your business now?
Yeah. So what the reason I pitched the thesis that I pitched for my doctorate, and the reason they liked it a lot, was because especially now there's a lot of people quitting jobs left and right. There's a lot of people getting laid off, and we're living in a whole different world of employment than we used to. So one of the interests that I had, and like I said, I put it as a fluke, but I was generally interested in the study, was what causes people to stay at a job for X amount of years and what causes them to leave. And I was very interested to see like what was the generational differences. Do Generation X have certain motivators? Do Generation Y, Generation Z? And then what are the trends that I see so that we can potentially, help hiring managers make the right decision and hiring the right people? And then how do we keep the individuals to stay long term? So with that, I was always fascinated at how can I make my staff stay? And I was always like looking at different like theories and different things to be able to use my staff as guinea pigs, because being in homeless services, being in human services, it really taught me that the average individual stayed 6 months to 3 years at any given human service field, whether it be case management, social work, mental health advocacy. And it was either because they were burnt out, they were mistreated, or they were overworked. It was never because they didn't like what they did. Every single one dreaded leaving because they loved what they did at work, but they just felt that they were not enough, or they felt that they couldn't contribute to what their clients needed, or they just felt like they were just burnt out. So I wanted to fix that problem. So I tested out a lot of my staff with different things, and you know, because of it, and I would tell them like I'm trying a new thing here. Let me know if you like it or not, and then we'll work together. And because of that experimental and that curiosity mindset that I had, my staff, especially in my most recent agency before I opened up my career my business, I had about a 95% retention rate because
Mm.
individuals were liking what I was putting there. And it was that curiosity mindset of like keep asking them what they wanted, keep asking them how do they want to grow, instead of just signing them up for random trainings, asking them, what do you want to grow in? How do you want to like develop? And because of that modality, I noticed other leaders in the same field were asking me, how did you do that? How did you, you know, you know, like teach us your ways? And I started doing that on the side. And when I graduated with my doctorate degree, I had a lot more concrete data and like a model that I could use to implement. And I was like, you know what, let's go into career coaching and let's go into career consulting and teach these other agencies how to essentially teach their leaders to treat their employees with respect, dignity as a human, and how to like what to look for when hiring future talent so that they can have a good experience, not only hiring them, but also training them and keeping them long term.
Yeah, super interesting. And it's funny, you already volunteered. I was going to ask you if your folks knew you were using using them as guinea pigs. Um, so yeah, that's it's funny because and like I'm certainly not an expert in this. I've been in business a long time and I've done my fair share of leadership and leadership trainings, et cetera, et cetera. And there's so many people that talk about salary. And don't get me wrong, like we all work because we got to put food on the table and we want to live a certain lifestyle and that's all well and good. But money does not motivate people the way most people think that it does, or the way most people assume that it does. And there's an engagement that has to happen if people are going to stick around. They have to feel like they're doing something that means something, and they have to feel like they're doing something that has purpose. And they have to be able to live a life that they want to live outside of work while all of that takes place. And that's a difficult balance to strike for a lot of employers, at least in my experience it has been. And me personally, like I've been awesome at juggling it at certain areas or points in my life as well. And, that's the hard part is it's different for everybody. What I think is the right amount of time to work or amount of effort that I put into work versus what I do in leisure time or how much time I spend with people I care about is different than maybe what yours is or somebody else's is, right? And that's a hard line to walk for employers. How do you how do you coach or teach employers or employees to figure out that balance? What are some good mechanisms by which people can make those judgments?
The first thing is one thing that I noticed across my research and even from working with the clients today is that a person's only going to stay at a job if they feel useful, if they feel like they're valued and they feel like they're contributing to something. Individuals want to feel like not like they have a share in the company, but at least what I did matter today. People don't want to go into just clock in, clock out, and go on a mindless job. It's an easy job to do, but at the same time, they want to be stimulated, they want to continuously grow, and they want to feel like they have a voice. So if a new product is being launched, are they asking them for their opinion? Is this something that's going to work? What do you think from your experience being in sales? Is this something that you think is going to be useful for the clients or not? Or hey, we're rolling out this new initiative for the company. Is this something you're even interested in? You know, a lot of leaders assume that because they have an interest in something, that their staff are also going to have an interest in something. You know,
Totally.
and it's not even, it's like, no. There was this one company that I worked with that they were asking and they asked me to consult with them to see, we're trying to initiate an employee benefits program. and we have this really good programming, but we want to like see as a consultant, do you think this is going to work out? And I said, okay, what's the program? And they're like, we're gonna essentially increase their 401k by like 20%. We're going to contribute and match. We're also going to increase their health benefits and then their dental benefits so that they pay less out of pocket. And I was like, okay. And then, but however, because of that, we're cutting their PTO from 2 weeks to 1 week,
Ooh.
and I was like, okay. Um, and I was like, what did the staff say when you pitched it to them? And they're like, what do you mean? And I was like, did you do an anonymous survey to see if that's something that they would even be wanting to do? Why would we do that? And I was like, isn't that what it's going to benefit? So wouldn't it be good to get direct or even create a sample group of individuals from different departments to at least give anonymous feedback? Oh, and we never thought about that. It just seems like this is a no-brainer. We just wanted you to give us a thumbs up. That was it. And I was like, no, this is not going to work out. I was just like, this is what I recommend. And when I did the blind study, it turned out that nobody really cared about a 401k. Half of the companies didn't even have a 401k to begin with because they didn't have money left over to put into the 401k. So this whole 401k thing was not even going to benefit half of the company. What they did say was add pet insurance, add a gym membership, add a wellness program, and then that would be more beneficial than a 401k. So when we brought this up to the company, they were like, oh, that's something we'd have never thought about. And the staff were super excited about this like pet insurance that now they can cover their dog and their cat in case of surgeries. And they had a lot of like individuals actually using it way more than their medical insurance. And it was something that, you know, it just benefited them a lot. So what I usually say is ask your staff, ask them what they want, ask them how they want to grow. This is not a cookie cutter approach where I can go to one agency, give them advice, and it'll be the exact same thing at another agency. You have to see what do the people want, how are they being like stimulated with growth, and then go from there and start that conversation.
Yeah, so it reminds me, this was years ago, and I should have bookmarked it. I can't recall. It was a place in Tennessee, and this guy had like a manufacturing plant. He owned like a manufacturing plant, and his wages were okay. They weren't great by any way, shape, or form, but his employees raved about him because he had all of these ancillary programs that his employees loved. So, for example, you could bring a shopping list and money, and someone would go do your grocery shopping and have those groceries ready when you were done with your shift. So, instead of you having to go after work and do it, it was done. You could just take the stuff home with you. If you bought the paint, he would send someone over to paint your house or a room in your house. I want to say he offered some type of a free daycare at the place as well. And they asked this guy, why do you do all this? And he said, well, I want people to stick around, and I actually spend less money overall doing this than I would any other things. And these are all things that people really appreciate. And so it creates tremendous loyalty and commitment from my team. And I was like, man, that's a guy that really understood things. And that kind of drove home from a leadership perspective to me. Hey, this isn't about all about money. Like, he makes their lives easier and gives them benefits that they don't see other people getting, and they feel valued.
Exactly, because it shows that you care and you see them as a person and not just like another number. And statistically, it costs 2 to 3 times the person's salary to replace them because you have to train, to hire, and use all these other resources. Plus, it stunts the processes for other people, and then other people have to take over, and it's a whole mess. So why not just invest in the individual's growth or individual and trying to make their life easier and happier than just keep replacing them every single month or every single quarter or whatever it is.
Yeah, totally. I worked at a place one time and we had this program that we called business analysts. And so we went out and hired all these really bright kids from really prestigious universities, the Harvards of the worlds, the Princetons of the worlds, the Dartmouths of the worlds. And I'm in the grocery business. So that's, my full-time gig. I'm the CEO of a company that owns and operates grocery stores in Chicago, but I've been in that business my whole life. And it's not a super sexy or easy business, but like, people got to eat. We're not going to start growing our own food anytime soon. So there's a lot of stability in it. And if you're willing to do the work, it can be both very like it's very rewarding because you literally keep people alive. You know, when you stop and think about it, you're providing nutritious food for kids and people with illnesses, and like there's a lot of benefits to it, but it's not super sexy. It doesn't jump out off the page at you. And it's kind of just a grind. Like it's, you know, think about how often everybody buys groceries. You have to replenish those groceries in the store. So it's nonstop. It's like the ocean, wave after wave after wave. So we bring these kids in from all these, and they're super smart, super hardworking. And they're used to achieving. And the program was, hey, we want you to understand the business because we think you can provide a lot of value to the business if you really get it. Well, it's not the easiest business in the world to figure out how it works. Like, you know, I'm where I'm at because I've been in it for 30 plus years. And I started at the end of a check stand bagging groceries and grabbing carts out of the parking lot. So I've done every job in a supermarket and I've done all sorts of other jobs and blah, blah, blah. Well, these kids, they would go through these rotations, and someone in the company noticed that when we had a high turnover rate in this program, people would stay for 2 years, then they'd leave. And they noticed that kids that came through my department tended to stay longer. And so they came to me and said, so what do you do different than everybody else? And I said, well, I actually give them a job. Like when they're on my team, they're responsible for things right now. And like, we don't just cut them loose. We don't just say, hey, go figure this out or else. We give them training. We have them job shadow and we teach them the things that they need to know, but they have KPIs and they have responsibilities. And that's what they want. They want to contribute. They don't just want to float around in the ether and learn cool stuff. They actually want to work and learn things. And we were successful with it because we actually gave them jobs and we made them a part of the team. We were like, hey, this isn't, you know, you're not here for 6 months to just learn stuff. You can learn stuff by jumping into the pit and working with us. And that was a really successful thing for us. That was another leadership lesson that I learned was people want to contribute. It's not good enough to, you know, give them a prestigious title and pay them a decent salary and then let them kind of float around. They didn't like it. It made them leave. They went somewhere else.
It's interesting that you say that because that's one of the things that I was pigging my staff with. And there's this theorist that his name is Douglas McGregor. In the 1950s, he came out with these theories called Theory X and Theory Y. This is where the nerd in me is going to really come out.
Bring it on. Bring it on.
Theory X basically states that individuals, like it's Theory X of leadership, says that individuals will do better if they're micromanaged, told what to do, and you know what they're doing every single second of the time. And then it's like they have no autonomy. The manager is the ruler. They're just like listeners. And then he made Theory Y, which says the manager is just there to mitigate problems, but they're assigning every single one with a task, and that they are the master of that task. They are responsible of that task. They have full autonomy on how they get that task completed, and they have to report back with results. And instead of creating one person to be in charge of multiple tasks, each individual has that task to be in charge of. So he tested both of those out, and he noticed that Theory Y leadership style was way more dominant than Theory X. And people ended up staying longer and they ended up like thriving in it. So I was like, let me try that. So I worked in case management. So you're going to be in charge of ensuring that everybody's case notes are done correctly. You're going to be in charge that everybody actually conducts their meetings with their clients. You're going to be in charge of making sure that the team feels connected, they feel heard, and they feel like they're a value here. You're in charge of meeting notes, and then each person had a specific duty, and everybody shared the duties, right? They had to do their regular job, but they had one additional task that was their baby. Because of that, everybody felt like they had leadership, like they were a leader in themselves. So they were working together. They knew that everybody was responsible for something. It increased communication. It increased the way that they see each other, like in a positive way. And they were just very lively and they felt empowered. And one person came to me when they left eventually because she decided to become a therapist. And she said, I haven't learned. She's like, I've had several jobs, but this job, even though I wasn't technically a supervisor, I learned so many good like tactics and skill sets that I don't think I could have ever learned anywhere else. And it was because of the way that you did things. And it was something that I learned from them as much as they learned from me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it creates some ownership. When people have a part in putting the plan together, they're going to work harder to make that plan successful because they don't want to fail. Like they got some skin in the game then. And it's my kind of my running joke. I say it as a joke. It's really not a joke. It's too bad you didn't know me when I was 20 because I was so fucking smart when I was 20. I knew everything. And you didn't even have to ask me. I would just tell you that's how smart I was. And I'm 53 now, and it turns out I'm a moron. I don't know anything. And there's lots of people, you know what I mean? There's lots of people out there that know so much more than me. And they're more than willing to share all that knowledge and information with me if I ask them a couple of questions and then shut my mouth. And it's just something that it's absolutely the way to go, just based on my experience. So you do a lot of work around burnout, and that comes from personal experience. Can you talk a little bit about your personal experience with burnout, and then we can pivot to some of the methods and techniques you coach other people on to deal with it and find their way out of it?
Yeah. So my burnout story stems from kind of like the way I grew up. Like I mentioned, failure was not an option. And when I was getting my master's degree, I was doing my master's degree as well as a full, it was like around roughly 30-hour internship that I would do 5 days a week. And then I was working full time. So
Ooh,
altogether, I was putting in, if I was lucky on a good week, maybe 80 hours on a week. And if I was really tough, I was putting 120 hours of work in a week. And that is not including studying, driving, all of that stuff that had to go in. And all this was back in the day in 2015 where, remote work wasn't really a thing. So everything was in person. Um, because of that, I was killing myself. I was like literally like killing myself in the sense that I was getting 2 to 3 hours of sleep a day. I wasn't really eating. I would be skipping meals because I felt like I didn't have enough time. I would be driving back and forth, like trying to do everything. I was the yes guy because I wanted to get as much knowledge as possible. I noticed that my studies were the first thing that was getting hit, and then I was starting to forget things, and I started getting very lethargic. And it was one night where I had a long shift. I started at 5 a.m., ended at 2, had an internship from 3 to 6, and then I had to drive to Riverside because I was living in Palm Springs at the time. Drive to Riverside to get to start do school. I did school from 7 to 11, and then I was driving home. It's about an hour and a half to drive from Riverside to Palm Springs. At that time, it's pitch black. For those that know the road, there's no lights. It's completely dark, and it's just you and the road.
that's the
It's a very
desert out there, right? You're in the desert.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
desert. You have to go through this mountain in order to get to one end to the other. And I just felt myself dozing off. It was just my body was heavy. I was fighting to stay awake. I remember I pulled over to the nearest Starbucks and I was like, give me like the most you can give me. So I can stay awake. And they're like, the woman was like, ethically, the most I can give you is 6 shots. And I was like, okay, give me 6 shots of coffee and let's do it. So I chugged it and then I went on the road. And even then, I was struggling and struggling. And I remember exiting the freeway, barely entering Palm Springs. And the next thing I know, I black out. I, what woke me up was I hit a lamppost, woke up, my car was in the air, started flipping. I kept hitting my head on the window of the car, and I would have got in and out of consciousness. I remember at one moment I opened my eyes and I saw like flashing red and blue, which I assume was a police car. Somebody was like on the window, like hitting me, like, "Sir, are you okay?" And then I kept dozing in and out. All of this, I was upside down, and I just remember somebody crashing the window, like breaking the window, and then I knock out. I woke up in the hospital, and I was in a gown. I was by myself in a room. I just saw white everywhere, and I was starting to get an anxiety attack because I was just like, "What is going on? Like, I don't know what the heck is going on." A nurse pops in, and she's like, "Oh, John Doe woke up." And I was like, what the heck? And a nurse came in, an officer came in, a doctor came in, and basically explained to me that I got in a really big accident. Nobody was hurt, but I demolished like a couple cars. I basically, the lamppost that I hit guillotined me into the air. My car was broken into two. The lamppost barely missed me, and all my stuff was scattered. They didn't know who I was, and I was unconscious for 3 days.
Good
And
Lord.
I know. And I was just like very like anxious, and I was like, what the heck? And the doctor basically said, I don't know what happened. I've seen accidents like not as bad as this, and people have died. You don't have a scratch, you have only a couple scratches, nothing is broken. You have a bigger purpose. Take this as your second chance for whatever happened. I just started crying. I was just like, this is like super intense. And I this is how bad my dedication to my work was. Instead of calling my parents, instead of calling family, instead of calling friends, the first call out was my boss, because I was like, I haven't been to work in 3 days. They must be like panicking. So I called my boss for my 9 to 5 job. She answered. She was like, "What the heck is going on? We haven't heard from you." And I was just like, "Oh, this is what happened." And then she's like, "Well, we actually just fired you yesterday because you were no show for 2 days. We already posted your position." And then I was like, well, like, what happened? Like, can you make an exception? And she's like, it sounds like a personal problem. You can reapply for
Oh,
your,
good Lord.
but there's no guarantee we're going to give you the position. And I said, okay. I called my internship and I told them, hey, this is what happened. They said, unfortunately, we also let you go because, you were MIA for 2 days. We highly relied on you and you disappointed us. And I was just like, I was in an accident. They're like, we don't care. I was like, don't ever come here again. And I was just like, okay. And the only one that actually understood it was my professors. I told them what happened, and then they were like, oh, that's fine. Take care of yourself. And I was just like, okay. And at that point, I realized it doesn't matter how much time, dedication, part of your life you give into an organization. At the end of the day, you're still another worker and you're easily replaced. Now, not all managers are like the ones that I had, but a good chunk of them are, and they're just gonna see you as a number and let you go. So at that point, I told myself I'm not gonna burn myself out and stress myself out to the point where my body literally shuts down because it can no longer run on empty.
That is wild. That is shocking that people would react that way. That's absolutely insane. Man. So how do you convey like you got like literally a wake up call? You didn't wake up for 3 days, but you still got the wake up call. Um, how do you convey that thought process, like you talked about at the end, that hey, I'm not gonna kill myself for things and people that don't give a shit about me? How do you convey that to someone that's stuck in the throes of I've got to achieve, I've got to do this, I've got to keep working, I've got to keep pushing? How do you get them to see to change that mindset? How do you coach that?
I typically ask, it's the very first question, and a lot of people tend to have difficulty answering the question. It's, when's the last time you felt unconditional joy? When's the last time you felt you were able to just take a breather with no worries whatsoever? And a lot of the times people look at me and they're like, well, I don't know. Like, I stopped seeing joy in my job because my job doesn't bring me joy anymore. And I was like, okay, so when is the last time you did find joy? And we have the discussion on being able to reintroduce joy into their life. And from there, once we discover what brings joy into their life, then we can rediscover how can they actually reintroduce rest into their lives. And it is a process. There's a lot of self-discovery, there's a lot of deep reflection that goes into it. And sometimes it is attached to trauma. So I recommend them to work with a therapist alongside me. Um, but burnout is intense because it literally mimics anxiety and depression. And even though burnout is not technically a diagnosable condition, it is a phenomena that takes from a lot of different diagnoses and starts acting and deconstructing your body. You stop feeling joy, you stop feeling, motivation, you feel brain fog, tired. You don't want to wake up. Sometimes you just want to oversleep. And it does essentially start destroying you little by little. So I take that away and then we start creating a self-care plan. And I tell all of my clients, we tend to put more time in planning what we're going to eat every day or in planning a vacation than we actually do in taking care of ourselves in our lives. That same amount of detail that we put of where you're going to go when you go to Disney World, I want you to put into your self-care plan on a daily basis. Self-care is not an emergency response. It is a preventative measure that we have to do to get there. A lot of my clients come to me when they are already on empty, but I told them we need to work on you filling up the tank in the car before it reaches empty. Because once you reach empty, they only have like 2 or 3 more miles before you shut down.
Mm.
We have to be able to work on teaching you, when it's halfway mark, let's refill, instead of waiting until it's the last quarter or your car now, smart cars tells you you have 5 miles to empty, before you end up putting gas.
Yeah, so you don't want to coast into the gas station. You got to get there while you still got some, some gas left in the tank, right? What are some common self-care things that people can do to refill that tank like the way you described it?
So it is different for each person, but there's one adult modality that I teach, which is the rule of three. So the rule of three states every 3 hours, you should get up from wherever you're at, move around, and do something different. Either change the space, walk to a different room, go for like a 10-minute walk, do something to change your environment. And then before you go back to work. So every 3 hours. Every 3 days, you need to leave your work and home schedule. So if you're able to work remotely, go into a coffee shop and work out of there. If you're able to work in the office or work from home, then switch it around. Or if you don't have that stability, that freedom to do that, then maybe take a different route to work. Do something different that is not just going from home to work. Change that scenery. Every 3 weeks, you should be leaving the city and go for one day or half a day. Go to a coffee shop you haven't been to. Go to a free museum. Go see a fair. Go see a movie in a different city. But change the scenery of the city so that you force yourself a soft reset in your mind. Every 3 months, go leave the county. Try to go to a different county, whether it be, if you're in LA County, go to Riverside County or whatever, and then try to go yourself on a little adventure to immerse yourself in different things. And then lastly, every 3 years, encourage you to leave the state or leave the country and experience new culture, new food, and different people so that you can reset yourself. And this is the rule of three. Just soft little resets, little micro resets in a scheduled way so that you start reintroducing self-care and good things into your life.
Man, that is awesome. I love that framework. That is so cool. I've never heard it.
Mm.
I've heard like versions of go do this, go do that, but that's a great way to think about it. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm going to talk to my wife about that tonight. That's an awesome framework, man. I love that. I love it.
Yeah, of course. And what I say, if it's not on your calendar, you're probably not going to do it. So make sure you put it on your calendar, all the different increments, and then you'll notice that you start getting into the habit of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. So let's pivot to what you've currently got going on right now because you got quite a bit of stuff going on right now. So you've got the business that you opened. You've also got a podcast, and I would love to talk about both of those things. Which one do you want to talk about first?
We can start with the podcast. So the
Yeah,
podcast,
let's start with that.
yeah, so it's called Finding the Unicorn in You, and it's a podcast where I essentially bring in guests and talk about how they achieve where they're at now. Every person has a unique story that inspired them to get where they're at, and it's showing people that everyone has what it takes to get there. We just made different choices along the way, and it's never too late to get there.
What's been the most I don't know if interesting is the right way to say it. What's pick a moment on your podcast or a guest on your podcast that stands out to you and what you learned from that conversation with them.
Oh, there's so many. So
Share more than
I've
one. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just very curious what your experiences have been doing that.
no, yeah, I've had experience. I've had times where I've had guests tell me I've never shared that part of my life with anyone, and I didn't know that I was going to do it live on your podcast. And I was like, oh, I couldn't even tell. Like that was something that was super powerful, and it made me want to share something like from my past. So I've had people who've shared that they've gone through domestic violence or they've gone through child abuse, or you know, I had one individual whose father never wanted him, left him out on the street, became homeless, and he worked his way from nothing to becoming, a multimillionaire right now. And he there's like different people. Just what I love about the podcast is that people become so raw and vulnerable, and you start connecting with people in a way that you wouldn't connect with just out in public, because you're providing a platform to really shine like the light on them. And it's like, this is all about you, this is about your life, and what makes you you. We're able to learn so many different life lessons. I call them unicorn lessons, to be able to implement into our own lives. There was one individual who shared her life about that she battled anorexia her whole life. Looking at her now, you would have never assumed. And she mentioned that, you know, a lot of people didn't really get to her, like, and it didn't click that she needed to stop until one of her best friends, who also died, like who died because she never took care of her anorexia. It like really impacted her, and that like influenced her to not only change her habits but teach other people what it is and how to change, how to like get out of it and create good healthy relationships with food. And it's just a beautiful way to get to know people. And I would say no one on my podcast is boring. Everybody has something to share.
Yeah, for sure. So I was curious because like I do this because I like doing it. And it's not a revenue generator for me. I'm not pursuing that at all either. Um but I share those similar experiences. It's always very humbling to me how honest people are willing to be when they come on the podcast and talk. And that's one of the reasons we do the screening call is I don't want to surprise someone or make them feel uncomfortable that, hey, what we ask people to do is just be genuine. And like we talked about earlier, when you when you jokingly said we were going to judge you from learning English by watching Pokemon, we we want an environment where people feel very comfortable just having like this is like you and me are talking like we've been friends for 20 years and we're sitting at the dinner table after dinner and having a conversation. And that's the environment we try to create because people are very willing to be just honest and genuine. And that's all we're ever looking for on our podcast. And again, it's not anyone's place, certainly not my place, to make value judgments on the decisions people have made in their lives. They get to be whoever they want to be, and I'm totally cool with that. I want to support that, and I want to learn from it, and that's that I get to learn so much from doing the podcast, which is what I love about doing the podcast. Speaking of learning, I want to learn more about your business. So you've got the business Rainbow Coaching, yes?
Yeah, Rainbow Career Coaching. So
Yep.
I mentioned a little bit about it before, but essentially I do a blend of coaching and consulting. I do one-on-one coaching, helping individuals just seek out professional development, learning how to set good boundaries so that they don't go through the burnout that I went through, and also being able to grow in their career. So if they feel like stuck or they feel like they're meant for bigger things, so whether it be a supervisor, a director, or even opening up their own business, I walk them through the process and help them through that. I also go into organizations, and this is where the consulting part goes, and do professional development, workshops, speaking, as well as group coaching to assist their leadership team, their service staff, and just really helping them feel more connected and feel like a unit instead of like a divided force.
Yeah, and so at least in your write up and other places we saw, you don't so it looks like you focus on the LGBTQ plus community, but you're not exclusive to the
Mhm.
LGBTQ plus community. Is that right?
That's correct. So I market a lot of LGBTQ plus and BIPOC individuals, but I'm open to anybody. The main reason is that we just don't discriminate. We're a safe space for anybody.
Got it. Yeah. No, look, I mean, that's such a, it's So like we've had conversation earlier that says this isn't true, but I would think that someone that operated in this field would act that way by default, but that is clearly not the case. Like, I told you the story about the woman we had on earlier that we haven't aired her episode yet. And she's such like just she's one of those like and it's the same with like almost everyone we have on the podcast. Like, they're just the people that you meet when you first meet them, you're like, hey, this is a cool person. Like I get good energy from this person. I want to learn more about this person. I want to be friends with this person. Um, I can't imagine someone judging someone like with, especially with that approach to life that's just so vibrant and so cool to be around. Like she loves cars. She absolutely loves the current tense, loves cars. Um, so have you in that process of coaching people and dealing with people, what have you learned about the LGBTQ plus community that you didn't know, or maybe you learned more about it since you started the business?
That is such a good question. Um, One thing that I learned was how to better support like my trans allies, and then like individuals who are seen as different. Because a lot of people see LGBTQ or queer and they think of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and that's it. But there's so much more that goes into it. There's people that are multi-gendered or transgendered or are, you know, having difficulty even accepting themselves. So just going in with a curiosity mindset and never assume anything. I made that mistake multiple times, and I've where I make assumptions about someone and I'm trying to assume, oh, this is the help they want, but that was nothing compared to what they actually wanted. So going in with the curiosity mindset and just ask questions instead of making statements.
So yeah, that's very similar to what you talked about earlier in terms of employee retention and the work you did around employee retention, right? So instead of thinking or throwing it out there and hoping you hit the mark, why not just ask, right?
Exactly. And the thing is that sometimes it's not malicious. We want to help people because we think, oh, I went through that problem, so I know exactly what they're going through.
Yeah.
But it may not that may not be the case. Like sometimes what you think is a problem is not really the problem.
Yeah, and different things motivate different people too, right? I read a great book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And so from like a career perspective, and you probably experienced something similar, as an individual contributor, you're kind of judged on your output, like your work output, right? How much X, Y, or Z did you do? And then typically, the way we see things work is that people that do a good job in those roles get promoted to the next role. Well, the next role actually can many times require a very different skill set to be successful in the next role because your job is different than it was as an individual contributor. And the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, essentially says when you move from individual contributor to a leadership role, your job is different and you need to develop leadership skills to be successful, not just, hey, I work real hard and I do a good job and that's good enough. And one of the, it was like, I think it was like 27, if I remember right. It was 27 examples or things to focus on that hey, you used to do this. Now you should focus on something like this. And it talked about there's only four things intrinsically that motivate people: power, money, popularity, and recognition. Some combination of those four things are the driving force behind what motivates anybody. I found it very interesting because I immediately recognized for me personally, power is the one that motivates me and not like, I'm sitting here twirling my mustache trying to figure out how I can rule the world. But I like to be in control of my environment and I like to be in control of as much as I can that's going to impact me or affect the outcome on my life. And so that's by far the most important thing to me. And so like money doesn't motivate me at all, other than, the more money you have, the more freedom you have in general. And so that part of money is attractive to me. But, money as an end all be all, it's never, even as a kid, I wasn't money hungry and I'm not judging people that like money. I just never resonated with me. This is me personally. It's never done anything for me. Popularity, no thanks. And there's a little bit like I always try to qualify that statement because I'm human. I don't want people to not like me. I like people liking me. I like to be popular, but I'm not going to change who I am to make that happen. I am who I am. That's good enough, or it's not good enough for some people. And if you don't like me, that's okay. I can live with that, and that's just fine. And recognition for me, I need respect. I don't like public or outward recognition. Like if if you held a big event and said, "Hey, we're going to honor Joe," I'd be like, "Yeah, Joe's not going to be there because he doesn't want to stand up on the stage and have everyone clapping and cheering and that kind of stuff." So it was interesting to me that those are the motivators. How do you how do you help people understand? Like you would ask them about when's the last time you experienced real joy? That's an interesting question. And like I was thinking about it from my own personal perspective when you asked about it. Mine's very easy because mine anytime I'm around my family or the people I care about, I'm fucking ecstatic. Like that's what I love doing. That's my favorite thing to do is be around the people I care about. And so, like, that doesn't have to be a big deal. Like, I go golfing with my sons. I have three grown boys. And, like, if we're out on the golf course just screwing around, like, that's when I'm at my happiest. If I'm sitting having a meal, joking around with my wife, that's when I'm at my happiest. Like, I love those moments. But how do you help people find that motivation through your career coaching and the coaching work that you do?
Finding out what their values are. So the joy usually stems from what they value in life. So for you, you mentioned connectivity, like relationships, like those are really big for you, autonomy. So finding out what activities or what people bring that to you and naturally create joy for you. So for some people, family is not their motivator. For them, it's like the least you could maybe didn't have that connection.
Mm,
For others, it may be, being alone, especially for our introverts. There's some people that you put in like going into a family reunion is probably gonna like give them anxiety versus actual, motivation. So finding out what values are important to them and then finding out the activities within that match with that. And if we're looking at a career perspective, does your job, does your company match the values that you have? So if your company it does not value inclusivity or value, being like appreciating the staff, and that is a big value of yours, and maybe this is not a good fit, and we need to find somewhere else that does do that. If they value being wanted and feeling like they're contributing, then finding a position where they actually can contribute and be relied on by other people. So just like finding out like where their values align and going from there.
Do you find that most people can answer that question easily? Like, what are your values, or does that take some soul searching?
It takes some soul searching. I do have a couple tools like the values wheel where I have like a bunch of words in a wheel, and based on a specific choice, it branches out into more things. And then from there, we take them through like a whole session of just like going through each branch and seeing if that resonates with them and if it's a yes or no. And then we write down certain experiences and certain memories that come from each one. And then we're like, okay, so from there, like your homework to kind of reflect on all this and seeing how do you feel about each one.
Mm, yeah, yeah, I love that. That's a great because that's what I found with like when I ask people what do you want, a lot of times they get a blank stare.
Yeah.
That's surprising to me.
Yeah, because sometimes that's the first time people ever asked them to do that. Like for me, if you would have asked me 20 years ago, what do you want in life? I would have been like, what did my parents want? That would have been my answer. But
Mm,
like what I wanted didn't matter. It's what the family and the collaborative wanted. Then I did that.
gotcha. So I saw on your website, what is laughter yoga?
I was waiting for that. So so that's one of the stress management techniques that I use to help with burnout. So laughter is one of the I love it because one, it's free, two, it's effective, and it's the body's natural way of being able to kind of hone yourself and regulate your hormones and being able just to put yourself back into synergy, into equilibrium, I mean. So laughter yoga was invented in 1995 by Dr. Madan Kataria in India, and he Started with 5 people at a park, and now it's practiced in over 100, actually 200 countries. So it's a lot. And it's essentially just yogic breathing with natural laughter exercises, laughing for no reason and reintroducing joy into your life for and giving yourself permission to just feel joy and laugh and tap into that inner child. I say you have to go in with an open mind because a lot of that you're doing like little like dorky stuff to be able to stimulate laughter, but you're not, it's just being free and allowing yourself permission to just have fun with the process. So we do a little bit of yogic breathing and a couple of different poses, but we also do activities where you move around, make eye contact, and laugh.
Got it. Yeah, I've done. So it's interesting. So I went through college on a baseball scholarship, and I've been involved with athletics a lot. And so I've done a lot of traditional training, weightlifting and cardio and all that other jazz. Um, I actually don't like yoga all that much, but I always feel the best after I do yoga. Like it's so good for you both mentally and physically. Um, I try to incorporate it again, not because I love it, but because I feel much better after I do it. And I always found that interesting. Like one of the things I like to do the least is actually probably the best for me.
Oh yeah. And it's stuff that we're like, I don't want to do it because I'm not used to it, or it's not something that seems like it's for me, but just try it anyways. The best people in life and the most successful people in life are the ones that are willing to try things even if they don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of things, right? Like branch out, like you talked about, like your power of three or rule of three. Um, yeah, like that forces new experiences. And I always tell people you got to learn to get comfortable being uncomfortable. If you want to be
Oh,
successful, you got to learn to get comfortable being uncomfortable because the only place you actually grow is when you're under stress. And
yeah.
that's not always comfortable, right?
Mhm. Yep. You have to be able to live with the discomfort and grow. If not, we start becoming stagnant.
Yeah. You know, I meant to ask you about this earlier, so I'm going backwards a little bit here, but you did a lot of work um, in the homeless space. What do you think is the most for those of us that don't have a lot of experience other than seeing homeless people? What do you think the most misunderstood thing is about homelessness in the United States?
That they wanted that lifestyle or they chose that lifestyle. A lot of people say like, well, stop being homeless. It's kind of like telling people, well, stop being depressed, stop being poor. You can't really do that. It's
Mm,
it's it's stuff that it's an unforeseen circumstance that happened that led them that way. Like, especially we saw a lot of that during the pandemic. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people got displaced out of their homes, and people started living out of cars. Stop, they got laid off, and it's not like these individuals wanted it to. It's not like they chose to quit their job and live on the streets. It's a circumstance where they were placed there, and they were doing the best as possible. And a lot of these mental health issues that derive like in the streets is what the individuals have is because they slowly went insane because their reality got shifted. Some of these people did have mental health issues that led them to become homeless, but others development like mental health issues while they were on the streets as a coping mechanism. I met I met quite a few women that would constantly be on cocaine because if they fell asleep, they would get raped while on the streets. So they started developing a cocaine addiction out of safety necessity because they needed to stay awake and the drug kept them awake. So they'll be sleep during the day and then take cocaine at night to stay awake so that they wouldn't get raped or battered or murdered. There was a lot of situations where individuals just assume of why people do things, but that was my biggest lesson is you have to be able, going back to my main lesson, you have to go in with asking questions because you never know what led that person to make the decisions. It's easy for us to judge from an outside perspective, but unless we are there living it like they are, we're not really going to truly understand.
Mm. Do you think we're working on the right things as a country to help prevent and or eliminate homelessness, or do you think there's things we should be doing that we're not?
It's a yes and no question. It's a yes and no answer. There is a lot of organizations and a lot of people outside of the government doing really good things to push it forward and to help like end homelessness. However, there's certain things that policymakers are doing that are going to add to homelessness, like cutting away Medi-Cal, cutting away stamp benefits will have people to choose: do I pay rent or do I give my kids food? Do I pay rent or do I pay my diabetes, my insulin that I need to take so I can live another day? So because of that, people are going to have to make tough choices. With inflation going up and a lot of people losing their jobs, people are making more and more difficult choices. And at the end of the day, being alive is better than having a home. So then they will go into homelessness. So I feel like the organizations that are out there providing low income housing, creating shelters, providing even stabilized housing programs are helping. But then if we keep taking away these benefits that are helping people live, it's going to harm them in the long
Hmm. Got it. It's interesting. And sorry, I know I went out of sequence there. It just popped back in my head. And I didn't want to, I meant to ask it when we were talking about that subject, and then it just popped back into my head. But pivoting back to your coaching and consulting business, the webinars and workshops, is that, do you tailor those to businesses, or do you have, I don't know if standard is the right one, but do you have programs you offer, or do you tailor those as necessary?
So right now I do have 30 different workshops that I've have created and have done time and time again and are frequently requested, but I'm always creating new ones. So if somebody has a specific topic that they want me to talk about based on my experience, then I usually can create a new workshop for them. But the most common ones is burnout, stress management. I do laughter yoga sessions with them. I literally just came back from presenting at a conference in New Mexico where I talked about shame in the workplace and how sometimes we feel like we're not good enough and imposter syndrome, and how do we get rid of that shame and guilt that either others imposed on us since we were small, or we just, it was learned behavior from our parents and from our loved ones, and how to like take control of that and being able to not stop us from keep growing and at work.
Mm. And are most of your clients groups and businesses or individuals, or like what's the mix, do you think?
I would say it would be like a 60-40, where 60% are organizations that hire me to go in, and then 40% are individuals that contract me privately. What typically ends up happening is I go into an organization, I do a presentation, and then the individuals there want additional support. So then they'll hire me privately.
Got it. And are most of your sessions in person, or do you do them online, or how does that work?
It's a hybrid approach. So if they're local to Southern California, then I'm more than happy to do in person. I have an office in Costa Mesa. We can go in there and do that. But I do see clients all over the states. So virtually works as well.
Got it. Yeah. And so the reason, like, our viewership is kind of all over the world. We've had guests on from Australia and Britain and all over the United States and Canada and et cetera, et cetera. And it's been my experience that most of the folks we have that either have coaching businesses or consulting businesses or those types of things have an online platform to kind of increase their reach. So I love that. And again, and this isn't directed at or against anybody, um, even though Jaime specifically promotes the fact that they are friendly to the LGBTQ plus community. You do not need to be from that community to seek help or to want to engage with Jaime. So I hope I chose my words carefully enough there so that I don't go viral and become famous for a reason I don't want to become famous, because we're about everyone being successful. We're non-judgmental here. It's Salty Ginger Talk. My whole point is, doesn't matter who you are. There's Jaime and his team can help, and if you're so inclined, make sure you check him out. We'll have links to all of his stuff down in the show notes, like we always do, so that you can get in touch with him and his team and figure things out from there. So Jaime, one of the things I do on the podcast, I ask a lot of questions, and I feel like we cover a lot of territory with our guests, which is great because I learn so much. But I also never want to disenfranchise anybody and miss something valuable because I didn't ask the right questions or didn't bring up the right topics. So I open the floor up and say, hey, is there anything I haven't asked you that you think is important? Or are there any topics we haven't talked about that you feel strongly about that you want to make sure we talk about while we're in front of the audience?
I think you hit pretty much all of the little like nooks and crannies that I would have gone through. So you were very thorough. So kudos to that. The only thing I would add on, and it's kind of like I learned from laughter yoga, was just don't take yourself or life too seriously. Enjoy the weird, enjoy the odd, and enjoy just the little moments that happened. The more we stop taking seriously and just laugh about things, you'll notice that you'll start enjoying life more.
I love that. I love it. That's a great way to look at things. And look, I've never taken myself too serious. I always say I don't throw stones because I live in a glass house, and as soon as I'm perfect, you got to be perfect. So you can sleep well tonight knowing you don't have to worry about perfection, because I have fucked up a lot of stuff in my day. I can tell you that. But,
Oh my
Jaime, I
God.
absolutely loved our conversation. Thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure to have you on the podcast. It was really great to get to know more about you.
Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too. And again, everybody, if you want to get in touch with Jaime and team, all of the stuff will be down in the show notes. So make sure you go there and check it out. So, Jaime, thank you again so much. Really appreciate it. You have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Okay, see ya.
Bye.
All right, guys, there we go. So, what a super guy. Super interesting story there. So, doesn't speak English, gets told by his guidance counselor, hey, maybe you should just go work retail because you're not a very good student. Winds up with a doctorate through a series of decisions and from busting his ass and putting himself in a good position. And now runs a business that is super inclusive and helps people live better lives, deal with stress, deal with burnout, does corporate coaching. We learned about laughter yoga. I've never heard of laughter yoga before, so I thought that was pretty cool. And yeah, just a great, great guy and a great guest to have on. And we appreciate Jaime coming on and sharing all that stuff with our listeners. And again, if you're in the business or in the market for some help, especially in your business, on inclusivity, on managing stress, on helping retention, all of the things that we talked about with Dr. Regoza. All that information is right down there in the show notes. So make sure you reach out to him and set up some time to talk with him. So thank you again, Jaime. Did a great job. Loved having you on the podcast. James puts it up over here every day. Head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All the podcast episodes are available there. Links to our social media accounts are available there. We publish a newsletter every weekday that you can subscribe to there. Make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe to our podcast, whatever platform you consume it on. It's great if you're able to do that. We've got awesome guests. We give you all sorts of tips and tricks and education to help build the life you want. If you miss an episode, you're going to miss great stuff. You don't want to do that. Make sure you catch the next episode. We will see you there.